I'm Brian Hirt, and I'm with the Lincoln and Omaha LEGO user group. And believe it or not, we don't have a portrait of Abraham Lincoln yet, even though that's who our city is named after. I put together this mock, which most people come up to and they look at the table and they see kind of this odd-shaped mosaic laying flat made out of 1x1 rounds. And I get some nods, and some people wonder if it's a stormtrooper or maybe some abstract art. Kind of looks like a black and white banana. And I don't usually tell them what they're looking at. I let them just keep looking. And eventually their eyes hopefully will wander up and they'll see the title Anamorphic Abe, and they'll see the letters Abe, and their eyes keep going up and they see that there's a cylindrical mirror on the table. And this artwork, when it's reflected in that mirror, squares itself up perfectly into a portrait of our president, Abraham Lincoln. So it's really a pleasure watching people come along and that have that moment of discovery that this piece of art, which is called anamorphic art, that means that it has to transform. It doesn't look correct on the table, but it looks correct in the funhouse mirror or the reflection when it comes to life.
This is just an absolutely mind-blowing build. So we have covered countless builds of these conventions we've gone to. I have never seen anything quite like this. When John and I walked up to this build, we first looked at the mosaic, like you said, and we were like, what is that? And then you look in the mirror and see Abraham Lincoln, and your mind is just absolutely blown here.
Well, that is truly praise from Caesar. Hearing that from you two who have seen it all, that means a lot to me. You know, I'm always trying to do different things with my builds and try to see what maybe hasn't been done yet. Now, I didn't invent this concept. This used to be a form of entertainment back before there was television. People would spend a nickel and they'd go to the fair and they would see a picture and put down a little reflective cylinder and it would turn into a shape. But I thought, well, heck, I could try that with Lego. I made a lot of mistakes. I had Abe Lincoln with donkey ears at one point because I didn't quite do it right, but I think pretty much now he's about where I want him, and I'm really pleased.
So let's dive into that build process then a little bit more. How do you build with the physical mosaic pieces and make it translate to the correct shape there and kind of the experimentation of that?
Sure. Some people said, well, did you just start by taking the mirror and laying tiles on the table? And of course, that would be crazy. I didn't. That's not how anyone builds their mosaics either. I did try using the mathematical formulas to try going from the going from the polar coordinates to the rectangular coordinates using a portrait of Abe Lincoln. It was really time consuming and I wasn't really pleased with the results. Then I figured there's got to be some way using computer programs, including Photoshop, like a lot of people use Photoshop or things like it, to transform that starting image into an image in these polar or round coordinates. That got me a lot of the way there. Once I built it, I had to make a lot of changes, like a lot of mosaics. It didn't look quite right, and I think his head looked a little square still, so I had to round him out in places and change a few things. But eventually he came together in a way that I'm pretty pleased with.
And then you've got the mirror itself. So how does that impact the way that people perceive the build? Did you have to find kind of the right shape and the right size of that to make sure that it portrayed well?
I did. Now, it turns out any mirror that's centered in the same place as that one will work. And if you think about it, if I got something as skinny as a barber pole, it would still work. It would just make him really small and really skinny. And if I kept going bigger, centered in that spot, eventually it would start getting him really wide, and eventually it would start actually being on top of my mock. I played around with different sizes. That mirror that you see there, actually, I have a version of that mirror in my house, and I'll let you in on a little secret. It's not easy to find a reflective cylinder. They're kind of expensive if you actually find one, but I'm just going to pull the title away and show you what this mirror actually is. It's a kitchen garbage can. This is an Italian brand of garbage can that's completely reflective, and we actually have one in our home. I went and bought a new one, and I showed this in Omaha, and people kept saying, "Brian, your mock is trash." And you know, that's a joke that is funny the first time, but by the 20th, I was like, well, when I take this to Chicago, the lid's coming off, the hinge is coming off. People might still know what it is, but I'm a little bit happier now knowing that it's a little bit hidden, but that'll be our secret.
There we go. No more negative comments.
That's right. That's right.
So how did you decide to go with Abraham Lincoln for the build here?
Well, I'm from Chicago, so I grew up in the land of Lincoln. I live in the city of Lincoln. I wanted something that would be recognizable to children as well, something really iconic, but also something that would work in black and white, in part because I had a lot of black and white 1x1s. And so I wanted to go with a black and white image to begin with. And of course, all of his pictures are so old that it just sort of worked out perfectly. I played around with some different choices, and this one just seemed to really work best.
Now, for people who see this idea and maybe want to attempt this on their own and try out this type of build, is there a size limit to kind of how big the mosaic can be in terms of what works well for the reflection? This is pretty sizable here, the width of this whole build, but how does that work?
What I would just caution people is that that mirror is really going to shrink stuff down. So you need something big to work on because just the reflection in a cylinder, in addition to warping, also shrinks. The nice thing is because you lay it flat, I don't have to have a structure like people who put a mosaic up. And if you look around the room, the ones that are upright have to have a backing and support. If I chose to go bigger, I could go farther and I could have a deeper table. The problem is as you get further away, it shrinks down more, so you get less bang for your buck. You can see if you look at it, the amount of white space below and above his head, there's way fewer pips on the table below as there are above. When you look at it in the reflection, they almost look like they have the same amount of white space because the closer ones just reflect bigger. So I don't see a lot of value in going much bigger than what I have.
No, that's a really good tip there. So any ideas to continue with this kind of building and maybe depict other famous figures or any other kind of art with this?
Well, I'll tell you, in Omaha, I built some three-dimensional rings. I think they worked well, but the way I did it, they had to be so close to the can or the mirror that they actually blocked their own reflection. So I don't think that was a complete success. I want to think about doing some sculptures that are actually a little further back so you can see the reflection properly. It's a little more work to build in 3 dimensions, but it's when it works, it really works well. So I think that's my next step, is maybe finding another shape to do in 3D.
Well, this is absolutely fantastic build here. Thank you for putting the work and time into figuring this all out so you could put it on display at the show. And I'm always blown away by your creative ideas and the builds that you attempt. So thank you for chatting with me again.
Well, thanks for coming to see me, and thanks for coming out to Chicago. It's a pleasure having you here.